Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Liverpool. This time out, it was Liverpool at home against Aston Villa, our first home game since becoming Premier League champions. And I would say there was a little bit of pressure from the fans to put on a good performance. One, to celebrate the win, but also two, to kind of get over the Manchester City defeat. It wasn't our best performance, and we want to celebrate in style as Liverpool fans. We want to celebrate winning the league in style. We want to celebrate with goals. We want to celebrate with great performances, and so that's why this game was like super important. Just to kind of stamp our authority down. We are the champions. Everyone's giving us a guard of honor before the game, and we need to play like we deserve that. And this game was there or thereabouts. I think the result was positive. And we've seen kind of Liverpool grind out many results like this, which is it's such a far cry from 4, 5, 6 seasons ago where we would draw games like that. There's no way we would win. We'd draw or possibly even lose to a goal on the counter attack or something like that. So just even seeing that progression from there is really, really great to see. We've ground out so many results like this throughout the course of the season, and the previous game against Aston Villa was very close, and they showed that they were going to be stubborn defensively and that they were going to cause some problems, particularly from set pieces, and that's exactly what they did. They set out very much to defend and defend really well, like they did, and I'll touch on kind of why I thought their defending was so good a little later on in this episode. But they came with the game plan. It was very, very simple: defend, compact, deep. Don't allow our players to run in behind, and then also gives them the opportunity to then kind of break. And the player I felt sorry for in the whole game was Kieran Davis. I think he was playing in that role that I think like Mikel Antonio does really well, where it's just one player up front and you need him to just kind of run and just chase things down and hold the ball up when he can. Poor guy was just running around the whole game, pretty much got no service, no decent service into him, and had a pretty tough game. But the game kind of started off before the game started. Sorry, we'll go into the couple of changes that Klopp actually made. And looking at the team sheet before, I was actually really kind of positive and looking forward to the team and the way we played based on these changes. I think the midfield kind of needed maybe a bit of freshening up. Obviously, we have a lot of legs in there with Henderson, Wijnaldum, and Fabino, but we often sometimes miss some of that creativity that is needed against teams that sit deep, teams like in the bottom half of the table, which we've definitely got better at playing at over the seasons. But it's still not one of our strengths against playing with teams that sit deep. So I was really, really excited to see Oxlade-Chamberlian and Keita, because they are the kind of more risk-taking midfielders that we have in our team, the ones that will take a shot, the ones that will play that threaded pass in between the midfield and the defence. And whereas kind of Henderson and Wijnaldum, yes, they can do that, but they're a lot more kind of solid and kind of they're more from a defensive perspective rather than even than an offensive perspective. So those were kind of two changes, and the only other final change that Jurgen Klopp made to the team was to bring in Divock Origi instead of Roberto Firmino. Now this was an interesting one. Klopp talked about the need for rotation because of the number of games. Now if that is the case, then I completely understand why he would switch out Firmino, because purely because of the amount of kilometers he puts in his legs every game. But Origi was not at his best today. We've seen sometimes when he starts in the Premier League how good of an impact he can make. The Everton game automatically springs to mind, but this game he really wasn't very good, and we saw the difference when Firmino came on in terms of how well and kind of how slick the play was between the front three and that transition between midfield and the attackers when Firmino came on. And I'll talk a bit more about those kind of front three later on in this episode, because I want to talk specifically about the drop-off between kind of our first 11 and our second 11, and just want to talk about it. I got some thoughts on that. But throughout the game, particularly the first half, we were very lethargic. Obviously, other than those three changes, we still had the same other 8 players who played against City and played against Crystal Palace as well before that. And we were just, the pace and intensity just wasn't there. It was a lot of very slow build-up, sideways passing. We were just not. We were not forcing things. We were kind of happy to play into Villa's game plan. And credit to them, they, as I said at the beginning of this episode, they played really, really well. The back four were really, really compact. they let the ball go out wide, particularly to Andy Robertson. Because Mane was coming in field, there was no, Andy Robertson was having a lot of space there, but he wasn't really going to cross the ball into the box because, there's pretty much all four Aston Villa defenders were within the width of the penalty area, so he wasn't going to cross the ball, and it just meant we had to play it back and sideways, and we kind of just got into that kind of rut sometimes we get into where we're not really forcing anything, and we were just very lethargic, and when we weren't really creating anything, and that kind of carried into the second half. Particularly in the first 10-15 minutes, it was very much more of the same. Trying, players like Sadio Mane coming deeper to pick the ball up, trying to instigate something. But as much as we were kind of lethargic, I do have to give a lot of credit to Aston Villa. They've been pretty poor, particularly on the road this season. But today they're really good, and maybe they're just a team we struggle against. You know what happened in the game earlier this season in November. But the three subs that Jurgen Klopp made to replace the three changes he made at the beginning were, for me, the kind of changing point in the game. I've talked a load in the Let's Talk Liverpool episodes. Go and check out pretty much every one where I talked about how, particularly the midfield, when Henderson and Wijnaldum are there, how it gives our team balance. And that's exactly what we got when they did come on, with Wijnaldum kind of on the right-hand side of midfield as opposed to the left-hand side, which he's normally on. But that didn't make too much of a difference because Keita was still kind of playing a very, very similar role in a kind of similar position to what Wijnaldum would play. And that balance in the midfield really helped, I think, connect the midfield and the attack, which I thought were they were quite separate in the first half. And I think Fabino helped with that as well because he does drop deep and he acts as the kind of almost number 10 playmaker, getting the ball into Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, or one of the fullbacks making a run out the outside. And we finally broke the deadlock with a great pass. It was the first time we talked about penetrating passes, about how a lack of penetrating passes, but this was one of the times where it was actually a great penetrating pass by Trent into Naby Keita, who was kind of in the inside left channel on the penalty box, and he was able to kind of square the ball across goal, and Sadio Mane, nipping in right in front of his defender, was able to just slot the ball into the roof of the net, came off the crossbar, and after that, it was a great finish, very smart finish, and after that, you could just tell that the players were relieved. They were just passing the ball more freely, they were making runs where they maybe weren't making runs in the first half, and for me, that just showed why getting an early goal, particularly for Liverpool, is super important. We take the Crystal Palace game, for example, is once we get that first goal and we have that lead, we then begin to express ourselves a lot more, and you actually get to see kind of the Liverpool that we all know and love and has been so successful over the past couple of seasons. And when we do kind of have to grind away results, we have been getting those results this season, but everything just seems like such hard work, which is why early goals, particularly for us, are super, super important. And then towards the end of the game, Curtis Jones came on. Great to see him get a goal as well. It was a great little kind of cross to the far post. I think it was by Andy Robertson. Salah just nodding the ball back into Curtis Jones, and I think his strike got a little flick off Tyrone Mings, I think it was, but went past Pepe Reina. And it was great to see him score. Great to see young players coming into the Liverpool team, being given a chance, but then also taking that chance. We saw his goal against Everton in the FA Cup earlier this season. We saw another goal from him, his first Premier League goal. Obviously, congratulations to Curtis Jones as well for signing his new 5-year deal. It was really great and promising to see that a young player like that wants to commit his future to Liverpool, because he obviously knows or has been told that he's going to expect more game time and things like that, which is great to see, because he has already shown in the limited time we've seen him at top flight football that he is a really, really good quality player. So that was the game, really. Aston Villa kind of tried at the end to kind of push forward, but once the first goal went in, you kind of saw their heads drop, and their kind of game plan went a bit out of the window. And unfortunately for them, they've still got a very tough battle to see whether they can escape relegation. The other kind of point I wanted to mention, which I talked about earlier, was around our second string lineup. So we saw Divock Origi start today, and we saw the drop-off in performance, particularly in the front three positions. And I'm super glad this week it's been announced that I think the African Cup of Nations is going to be postponed for next year, given everything going on with COVID-19. And that makes me super happy. I think the odds of us and the chances of us retaining the title are so much greater now, knowing that Mane and Salah won't be going for, possibly up to 4 or 5 weeks to play in the African Cup of Nations. Keita too as well as part of that, and maybe even Joel Matip. I'm not sure whether he's retired or not yet from international football, but I think we've talked about this, but the drop off, I think, in all positions between our first 11 and our second 11 is much bigger than I think Klopp would like it. We saw even with midfield, Oxlade-Chamberlian and Keita, two very, very good players, very expensive players who have proven themselves. But we saw today, we're not the same kind of fluid team that we are when we have the balance of Henderson, Wijnaldum and Fabinho. And I think it's something that Klopp definitely is aware of and hopefully will be looking to address in the summer. And I don't think it's huge, expensive players that we need to buy as part of that, because you've got to understand that these players also are going to be kind of second choice players. They're not going to be the first choice players. And they have to kind of accept that, right? But they still have to be good enough that when they get called into the team, they can still do a really, really good job. And they can kind of show, they can make an impact into the game, right? That's kind of the main thing we need. We need players who can impact games both when they come off the bench, but also when they're needed from the start, that they can help break down the teams that we play against, particularly the ones that sit deep, and they can just make a great contribution to the game. So I'm going to end the episode today, guys, like I always do, with a shout out to Klopp. And the shout out to Klopp this week for me is about Naby Keita, and so much promise about him. I really, really do like him, and I really want to see him play more and continue to play more game time, which is why the shout out to Klopp from this episode is going to be to keep giving Keita play time. I've talked about the balance of the midfield and Henderson, Wijnaldum and Fabinho, but Keita really does give that kind of attacking spark that those three don't give. And it'll be really, really, I want to see him get more game time. I think the more he plays, the better he'll gel with the players and the team and things like that. So it'd be great to see him have more game time. But that's it, guys. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you on the next one.